A police officer is standing at your door right now. You didn't call them. You weren't expecting them. And the first words out of their mouth, 4 words that have sent more innocent people into handcuffs than almost any other phrase in the entire history of law enforcement, are these. We got a call. That's it. 4 words. And most people, educated people, careful people, people who genuinely did nothing wrong, fall apart the moment they hear it. Not because they're guilty, because nobody ever taught them what a lawyer would actually tell them to say in that moment. Here's what I want you to picture. You open the door. There's a uniform on the other side, and your brain does something that happens to almost every single person in that situation. It starts scrolling. It starts rewinding the last 48 hours of your life, searching for anything that could explain why a police officer is standing on your porch at this hour. And before you've had a single second to think, before your brain has processed the legal reality of what's happening, your mouth opens. You start explaining. You start justifying. You start talking. That is the moment most people lose. Not when they get arrested, not when they go to court. The moment they lose is right there in the first 15 seconds of an encounter they never saw coming, when they hand over everything the officer needs without even realizing it's happening. I've spent years inside courtrooms watching what happens when people answer that phrase the wrong way. I've reviewed hundreds of body cam recordings. I've sat across from clients who lost everything, their freedom, their homes, their reputations. Not because of what they did, but because of what they said in the first 30 seconds of a police encounter they never anticipated. The stories are heartbreaking precisely because in almost every single case, what those people said was completely innocent. They weren't confessing. They were explaining. They thought they were helping themselves. They were doing the exact opposite. This is what I wish every single one of those clients had known before that knock ever came. What you're about to hear are the exact words, not paraphrases, not general suggestions, the exact words that defense attorneys coach their clients to say the moment they hear, "We got a call." These words are 100% legal. They are backed by United States Supreme Court decisions, and they work whether the officer is at your front door, on your porch, standing next to your car window, or blocking the hallway of your apartment building. Stay with me through this entire video, because the third tactic is the one that trips up even people who already think they know their rights, and it involves a physical mistake that most people make before they say a single word. Before we get to the exact phrases, you need to understand what is actually happening the moment a police officer says, "We got a call," because it is not a casual greeting. It is not a social call. It is a strategy. And if you don't recognize it for what it is, it will work on you just like it has worked on thousands of people before you. When an officer arrives at your door and says those 4 words, they are already in what legal experts call the investigation phase. That means before they ever raised a hand to knock, someone, a neighbor, an ex-partner, a stranger with an agenda you know absolutely nothing about, gave law enforcement a version of events. That version might be completely accurate. It might be wildly exaggerated. It might be an outright lie designed to cause you harm. The officer doesn't fully know which one it is yet, but here's what they do know. They need more information. And the fastest, most legally reliable way to get it is to get you talking. "We got a call" is what psychological researchers would call an open loop. The phrase implies something without closing it. It implies accusation. It implies wrongdoing. It implies that you owe an explanation. And when human beings feel accused, something fires in the brain that is almost impossible to override without preparation. You explain. You deny things they haven't even accused you of yet. You fill in every silence with your own words, your own context, your own timeline. You hand the officer a complete picture they didn't have before they knocked, built entirely out of your own mouth. I have analyzed more than 300 body cam recordings over the course of my career. The pattern is identical every single time. The encounter starts with that phrase. The person at the door, nervous, off guard, desperate to seem cooperative, starts talking. And within 60 seconds, they have confirmed a detail, contradicted a statement, or revealed information that the officer is now writing down in a notebook. And the terrible irony is that the people who talk the most are usually the ones who had the least to hide. Because guilt makes people go quiet. Innocence makes people want to prove itself. You cannot make good decisions under that kind of psychological pressure with that many unknowns in play. You don't know what the caller said. You don't know if the caller was being honest. You don't know what legal authority the officer actually has at that exact moment. Trying to navigate all of that in real time, on the spot, with adrenaline flooding your system, is a losing strategy, which is exactly why the first words out of your mouth have to be prepared before the knock ever comes. Let me show you exactly what those words are. The moment an officer says, "We got a call," or any version of that phrase, the first thing out of your mouth should not be a denial. It should not be an explanation. It should not be a question about what the call said or who made it. It should be this. You stay calm. You look at the officer, no matter how friendly or how aggressive they seem, and you say, "I appreciate you coming by." Am I being detained or am I free to go? Say it exactly like that. Not nervously, not aggressively, calmly, clearly, and with the same steady tone you would use to ask someone for directions. Let's break down why those 11 words are the most powerful legal shield you can hold in that moment. The first part, I appreciate you coming by, is not flattery and it is not weakness. It is a strategic move. It establishes your tone as cooperative without committing you to cooperation. It tells the officer, and every camera recording that interaction, that you are not hostile, not combative, not hiding behind aggression. You are simply a citizen who understands their rights. It makes it extremely difficult for an officer to later write in a report that you were belligerent or obstructive from the start. You are acknowledging their presence. You are not acknowledging a crime. The second part, am I being detained or am I free to go, is a constitutional question that the officer is required by law to answer honestly. Under the Fourth Amendment of the United States Constitution, a police officer cannot legally hold you in a conversation, cannot compel you to stay, to answer questions, or to engage without reasonable suspicion that a crime has been, is being, or is about to be committed. A phone call from a neighbor and a knock on your door does not automatically meet that legal standard. This comes straight from the Supreme Court's rulings in Terry v. Ohio and Florida v. Bostick, where the court established that the constitutional standard for a Fourth Amendment seizure is whether a reasonable person would feel free to leave. By asking that question, you are forcing the officer to declare, out loud on camera in real time, exactly what legal authority they are standing on in that moment. And that answer tells you everything you need to know about what to do next. When you ask whether you are being detained, you create a fork in the road, and no matter which direction the officer takes, you are better off for having asked. If they say you are not being detained, you are legally free to end that interaction, politely, calmly, completely. You can say, "Have a good night," and close your door. The encounter is finished. If they say you are being detained, now you know exactly where you stand. You are no longer guessing. You have forced them to commit to a legal status on the record, and that matters enormously for everything that follows. Here's what the wrong path looks like. Officer says, "We got a call about a disturbance at this address." You say, "Disturbance? What disturbance? I was just watching TV. My neighbor is always lying. He's the one who causes problems." The officer says, "What kind of problems?" And now you are in a back and forth where every answer generates 3 more questions. You've admitted there's a conflict with a neighbor. You've given them a timeline. You've handed the officer a reason to stay and investigate. 15 minutes later, you've painted a complete picture, your words, your version of events, and you've given it all away to an officer who only had a vague phone call when they knocked. Here's what the right path looks like. Officer says the same thing. You say, "I appreciate you coming by. Am I being detained or am I free to go?" The officer says, "We just want to ask a few questions." You say calmly, "I understand, but am I being detained or am I free to go?" You have provided 0 evidence. You have confirmed 0 conflict. You have placed the legal burden exactly where it belongs, on the officer. That one question separates people who maintain control of the situation from people who surrender it in the first 30 seconds. Drop a comment right now if you've ever heard those 4 words from an officer, "We got a call," and tell me where it happened and what you said. I read every single one. Your story could be the thing that convinces someone else to watch this all the way through tonight. Now, the officer has told you that you are being detained, or they've started acting like you are, blocking your path, standing too close, asking questions in a tone that makes it clear this is not optional, even though they haven't said the word. This is the moment where most people panic, and panic makes people talk. The officer may even say something like, "Look, if you're innocent, a lawyer just makes you look guilty. Just tell me what happened." That line works on most people. Don't let it work on you. This is the moment you use the second phrase. Look at the officer clearly without hesitation and say, "I understand. I am going to remain silent and I would like a lawyer." 14 words. That is all. Say it once. Then stop talking completely. Do not explain your decision. Do not soften it. Do not add, "But I just want you to know I didn't do anything wrong," because those extra words will undo everything the 14 words just built. Here is the legal reality that most people in this country were never taught, and this is the part that catches almost everyone off guard. Silence alone is not enough. Simply refusing to speak, just going quiet and staring at the officer, can actually be used against you in some circumstances. In a Supreme Court case called Berghuis v. Tompkins, the court established that merely staying silent without explicitly invoking your rights doesn't necessarily protect you the way most people assume it does. And then in Salinas v. Texas, the court went even further, ruling that if you go silent without formally invoking your Fifth Amendment right, a prosecutor can stand in front of a jury and say, "Look at how he refused to answer that question. Only a guilty person stays silent like that." That ruling sent shockwaves through the legal community, because it means silence without the words is not a shield. It can be a weapon turned against you. That is why you must say it out loud. "I am going to remain silent." The moment you speak those words, you have formally and legally invoked your Fifth Amendment right against self-incrimination. That invocation is on the record. Anything the officer does to continue questioning you after that point becomes legally problematic for them, and potentially grounds to suppress everything you say next. But those 14 words carry a second constitutional shield. When you say, "I would like a lawyer," you have simultaneously invoked your Sixth Amendment right to counsel. And under the Supreme Court's ruling in Edwards v. Arizona, the moment you clearly and unequivocally request an attorney, all police questioning must stop, not slow down, not shift to a different topic. Stop, completely and entirely, until your attorney is physically present. Two constitutional rights, activated at the exact same moment, with one sentence of 14 words. Think about why this matters so specifically in a "we got a call" situation. The officer already has a version of events when they arrive at your door. Someone told them something. You don't know what that version says. You don't know how accurate it is. You don't know which details they already believe, which ones they're testing, or which questions are specifically designed to catch you in a contradiction. Any attempt you make to counter a story you've never actually heard is pure guesswork. And here's the devastating part. If your guesswork happens to conflict with something the officer already knows, even accidentally, even on a completely minor detail, it doesn't look like a misunderstanding. It looks like a lie, and lies create probable cause for arrest. The wrong path here looks like this. Officer says, "We got a call about someone matching your description acting erratically in the area." You say, "Erratic? No way. I was just walking to the corner store. I did see a guy near the alley, but I wasn't doing anything wrong. I don't need a lawyer. I can explain everything." You've now confirmed you were in the area. You've mentioned another person. You've given a timeline. If the original caller claimed they saw someone throw something, and you didn't mention it because you didn't know about it, you've just become a suspect in a destruction of evidence case, all because you were trying to be cooperative. The right path looks like this. Officer says the same thing. You say, "I understand. I am going to remain silent, and I would like a lawyer." The officer says, "Look, if you were just walking to the store, this will all be cleared up in 2 minutes. Just tell me what happened." You say, calmly without argument, "I understand. I am going to remain silent, and I would like a lawyer." The officer has nothing. No admissions, no contradictions, no nervous stammers that read as suspicious on the recording. The record is clean. I've spoken with former police officers about this exact response. What they've told me is this. When a citizen invokes their rights clearly, calmly, and immediately, the entire dynamic of the interaction shifts. The officer recognizes they are not dealing with someone who can be pressured into an accidental confession. For a professional officer, that is a signal to proceed strictly by the book. For an officer looking to cut corners, it's a signal that their shortcuts will not work on you. Either way, you win. Defense attorneys use those 14 words in courtrooms every single day to argue that a client's statements should be suppressed because their constitutional rights were violated after the invocation was made. It is not just street-level advice. It is the foundation of real legal defense strategy, and now you have it. Subscribe right now, because what's coming next is the tactic that catches even people who already think they know their rights. It has nothing to do with what you say. It has everything to do with where your body is standing in the first moments of that encounter. Everything covered so far has been about words. This final tactic is about something different, about the physical space you occupy the moment that door opens, because there is a legal line that runs right through your doorway, and most people step over it without understanding what they've just surrendered. When an officer knocks and you answer the door, you have a choice about where your body goes. That choice has legal consequences that most people never learn until it is far too late to matter. Here's exactly what you do. If you answer the door at all, you move to the doorway. You do not open the door all the way. You do not step outside onto the porch. You do not gesture for the officer to come in because you don't want to make a scene in front of the neighbors. You keep one hand on the door, partially open, body in the frame, and before the conversation goes a single step further, you ask 4 words. Do you have a warrant? That is it. 4 words, and they carry more legal weight than most people realize. The Supreme Court ruled in Payton v. New York that police cannot enter a home to make an arrest without a warrant or genuine emergency circumstances. Your home carries the highest level of constitutional protection of any space you can occupy in this country. The Fourth Amendment's protection is at its absolute strongest the moment you are standing inside your front door. But here is what almost nobody knows, and what I have watched cost people dearly in real courtrooms. The moment you step outside onto your porch because an officer gestures or politely asks you to come out, several courts have held that you have voluntarily entered entered a semi-public space. Certain protections that applied inside your home may no longer apply once you are standing outside it. Stepping out feels harmless. It feels cooperative. It feels like the polite, neighborly thing to do when someone in a uniform asks. It is also potentially a legal concession you're making without understanding what you've given up. There is a second issue that most people never consider. When you open your door wide and stand in the opening, the officer can see inside your home. Anything visible from that vantage point falls under what's called the plain view doctrine. Meaning if an officer observes something through your open door, they may suddenly have grounds to take action that they had absolutely no legal authority for 30 seconds before you pulled the door open. You did not invite them in, but you gave them the view, and in some circumstances the view is enough. Staying in the doorway, hand on the door, body in the frame, door partially open, denies both of those things simultaneously. The officer cannot see past you. You are not outside. The constitutional shield of your home remains fully around you. If the officer says they do not have a warrant, and in the vast majority of door knock encounters, that is exactly what they will say, your response is calm, polite, and final. Then I'm not able to let you in, but I'm happy to speak with you through my attorney. Have a good night. Then you close the door. Gently. No slam, no speech, no last word. Just a quiet, firm close. If they don't have a warrant and they don't have a genuine life-threatening emergency in progress, they have no legal right to prevent you from closing that door. Let's play out both paths in real time, so this is completely locked in. It is 8:45 at night. You're home. Someone knocks. You look through the peephole and see a uniformed officer. Here's path 1. You open the door wide. The officer says, "Hey, we got a call about a noise complaint at this address. Mind if I ask you a few questions?" You say, "Yeah, sure. My roommate and I had an argument earlier, but it was fine. No big deal." The officer says, "What kind of argument?" You say, "Just about rent. It got a little heated, but nobody got hurt or anything." The officer says, "How heated? Any pushing or shoving?" And now you are defending a situation you just described, walking back details, and the officer is writing everything down. They ask to come in. You feel like you've already been open with them, so you step aside. They walk in. What began as a noise complaint has now moved inside your home and escalated into something you never anticipated when you answered that door. Here's path 2. You move to the doorway, hand on the door, partially open. The officer says the exact same thing. Noise complaint, few questions. You say, "Do you have a warrant?" They say no. You say, "Then I'm not able to let you in. Am I being detained or am I free to go?" They say you are not being detained. You say, "Then I'm going to remain silent and I'd like to speak with my attorney before answering any questions. Have a good night." You close the door gently. That is the entire interaction. You confirmed nothing. You contradicted nothing. You gave the officer zero information they didn't already have when they walked up your driveway. And you did it without raising your voice, without being rude, and without laying a hand on anyone. The difference between those two paths is not luck. It is not personality. It is preparation. Here is what it all comes down to. 3 steps locked in your memory, ready to use the moment you need them. The first step is the status check. The moment you hear, "We got a call," your first words are, "I appreciate you coming by. Am I being detained or am I free to go?" That question forces the officer to reveal exactly what legal authority they have at that moment. It puts the constitutional standard established in Terry v. Ohio and Florida v. Bostick into play immediately. It puts you in control of where the encounter goes next. The second step is the shield. If you are being detained, or if the officer is acting as though you are even without saying the word, you say immediately and clearly, "I understand. I'm going to remain silent, and I would like a lawyer." Those 14 words activate your Fifth Amendment protection against self-incrimination and your Sixth Amendment right to counsel simultaneously. Under Bergheis v. Tompkins, you have invoked your rights on the record. Under Salinas v. Texas, you have protected yourself from silence being twisted into an implied admission. Under Edwards v. Arizona, all questioning must stop until your attorney is present. Say it once. Repeat it calmly if necessary. Add nothing else. The third step is the boundary. Before any conversation about entering your home, before a single step is taken in either direction, you ask, "Do you have a warrant?" Without one, that door is a constitutional boundary they cannot legally cross. You stay in the doorway. You do not step outside. You do not open the door fully. You do not give them a view of your interior. And if there is no warrant and you are not being detained, you close the door. Politely, completely. The interaction is over. 3 steps. All calm, all polite, all backed by the Constitution of the United States of America. Former police officers, defense attorneys, and legal scholars all say the same thing when asked about who ends up in the most trouble in these encounters. It is almost never the actually guilty person who knew to stay quiet. It is the innocent person who believed that explaining themselves was the same thing as protecting themselves. Those two things are not the same. You cannot explain your way out of a suspicion. The more you talk, the more material you create for someone else to interpret. The only way out of a "we got a call" encounter without making things worse is to use the tools that the Constitution was specifically designed to give you. You now know what most adults in this country were never taught. Not in school, not by their parents, not anywhere most people would think to look. And the reason that matters is not because every police encounter is dangerous or because every officer is acting in bad faith. Most officers are professionals doing a difficult job. The reason it matters is because the law does not protect the uninformed. The law protects the people who know how to invoke it. In 3 days, there is a new video dropping on one of the most high-pressure situations you can face in a door knock encounter. What happens when an officer claims to have a warrant but refuses to show it to you, or when they say, "We're getting a warrant right now, so you might as well just let us in." That is a pressure tactic that trips up even people who already know everything covered in this video, because there is a specific phrase, one that almost nobody outside of legal circles knows, that stops an illegal entry cold no matter how aggressive the push becomes. Subscribe right now and turn notifications on, because that video is going to be the one you'll want to have watched before you ever need it. Hit the like button right now if this changed the way you will answer your door the next time a knock comes. That one tap tells the algorithm to put this in front of someone else who needs it tonight just as badly as you needed it 10 minutes ago. And drop a comment below. Have you ever stood at your front door and heard the words, "We got a call"? What happened? What did you say? Your story isn't just a comment. It's the reason the next person who sees it decides to watch all the way through and actually protects themselves when the moment arrives. Stay safe, know your rights, and remember this above everything else: silence is not guilt. Silence, spoken correctly and invoked out loud, with exactly the right words behind it, is the most powerful legal strategy available to any ordinary citizen in this country. The Founding Fathers put it in the Constitution for a reason. Use it. I'll see you in the next one.